People are finally waking up to the fact that Republican Congressman Steve King of Iowa is a white nationalist. Now it appears they're ready to do something about it. Today, Congressman Steve Stivers, that would be the chair of the NRCC, the group charged with getting Republicans elected to the House, all but called King a white supremacist. Quote, Congressman Steve King's recent comments, actions, and retweets are completely inappropriate. We must stand up against white supremacy and hate in all forms, and I strongly condemn this behavior. Corporate donors are abandoning Congressman King as well. Today, both dairy giant Land O'Lakes and Purina Pet Care pulled support from King, following a similar announcement yesterday from tech company Intel. King's own hometown newspaper, the Sioux City Journal, broke with its past backing of King and instead endorsed his Democratic opponent, J.D. Scholten. And the polls suggest it may be a real race. While a Republican pollster last week showed King with a big lead, a Democratic pollster today found the candidates are effectively tied 45-44. The influential Cook Political Report has now moved the district from likely Republican to lean Republican. Now, just about the only person who isn't calling Steve King a white nationalist these days is Steve King, although even he is hedging, kinda. King put out a statement today saying Americans are all created equal by God. No word on non-Americans, with King adding that, quote, attacks on him are orchestrated by the fake news. Joining me now is Think Progress founder Judd Legum, who now writes the newsletter Popular Information and whose tweet yesterday asking why Land O'Lakes gave money to King was retweeted more than 11,000 times, which probably got their attention. I should note we once again invited Steve King onto the show and once again got no response from his campaign. Judd, what do you make of this? It's like the jar of mayonnaise that you're trying to get off, that you're sort of squeezing and squeezing, and then suddenly it pops off.
Yeah, I think that Steve King has been up to this for many years, as you know. Go back and you can look at his comments about immigrants, his comments about minorities, his comments about diversity. But I think we've hit a moment, especially with the attacks over the weekend, where someone who has so openly embraced white nationalism, the recent endorsement of a fairly open white nationalist for the mayor of Toronto, of all places, and you connect that up with corporations who are not just selling products in Steve King's district, where Donald Trump won by 27 points, but across the whole country, and it becomes an untenable situation. There's
also the fact of this. I mean, you got the Sioux City Journal saying that Scholten represents the best choice in the 4th Congressional District, the Des Moines Register, talking about Steve King employing his family as year-round campaign staff, which is an unusual approach. He's getting outworked and out-hustled in the district right now, partly, I think, because he seems to want to sort of perform as U.S. ambassador to white nationalism internationally.
Yeah, he spends a lot of time traveling he was just in Austria, travels all around the world, meets with these far-right figures. He hasn't spent really any of his money on campaign ads. He hasn't been on the air. He spends a lot of his campaign donations on his family. And so even though Donald Trump won his district by 27 points, there is this poll, as you mentioned, that shows his Democratic opponent within a point. So I think anything can happen. I think you'd still have to make King the favorite just because his district is so bright red. But it's a very interesting experiment of how much of a white nationalist can you be and still get elected in America.
And we should note that there are ads being run in that district calling him Klan and neo-Nazi approved. He's getting outspent on the airways. I found the Steve Stivers comments today pretty striking. I mean, obviously they've known this all along. They know who the guy is. They know what he says. But the timing of that was interesting, and particularly because he would be the person to sort of ride to the rescue with money if it looked like King needed to be rescued.
Yeah, the cavalry is not coming. I think they were very clear about that. Clearly, I think Stivers believes that King is probably making his job more difficult in some of these other districts that remain competitive by being a face of the Republican Party who's adopting these really abhorrent positions. But I thought what was interesting is you do have Stivers speaking out. You haven't really seen Paul Ryan say anything. Other than the most milquetoast comments. You haven't seen Kevin McCarthy, who probably will be the head of the party once, the head of the House caucus once Ryan retires, say anything. So Steve King is still pretty entrenched in the House, in the Republicans, still has his committee assignment. So we saw the tweet, but I haven't seen a lot of backup yet.
A great point, and it's also true that this has been the case. Everyone's been basically mum over the last, both the duration of his career, but I would say particularly the last year or two when it's kind of ticked up, endorsing the white nationalist Toronto person, this crazy thing where he goes to Poland and visits death camps, I believe, but says he sort of wants to ask the Poles how their experience of it was, not just the Jews. It's gotten weirder and weirder, and I think more offensive, and we've basically heard radio silence from the Republican Party.
Yeah, I think because of Donald Trump. I think Steve King has always been this person. He has always believed these things, and we've seen signs over the years. But I think that Donald Trump has really given him license to show his true self. And when Donald Trump visited Iowa just a few weeks ago, he gave Steve King a big shout out. This hasn't given Donald Trump any pause. And so until the Republicans get their hands around that, until they realize that a lot of the stuff that Steve King is saying is flowing all the way up and down the Republican leadership, I don't know how much good it's going to do. It's
perhaps not surprising that Steve King has sponsored legislation to end birthright citizenship, the exact position the President of the United States took today. Judd Legum, thank you for being with me.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.